Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the simple and AI-powered rewards and recognition platform for employee engagement.
Hi everyone, I'm Sanjeevani Saikia, your host, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to another exciting episode of the Vantage Influencers Podcast. The conversation around the future of work and workforce is at the forefront of our minds like never before. With remote work becoming the new norm and automation reshaping industries, the very fabric of how we work is undergoing a massive shift. We're not just discussing the future of work here, we're actively shaping it. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Salil Raheja, Director HR at Schneider Electric, a distinguished authority in leadership and organizational development, to explore this vital topic with us. Hi, Salil. Thank you so much for joining in today's conversation.
Hi, Sanjeevani. Thank you for inviting me. My pleasure to be part of this podcast today.
Great to have you today with us. Before we dive into today's topic, I'd love to hear about your professional journey so far.
Sure. So, just to give a very brief introduction about my professional journey, I am an HR practitioner for now close to 15 years. I basically an engineer, but always wanted to do a management degree. So that's where I went into HR 15 years back, post my MBA from MDI Gurgaon. My first stint was in a company called SR Group, where I worked for 9 years into different domains of HR. Had a stint in factories, had a stint in the corporate office, managed portfolios around HRBP for the sales teams and certain COE roles in the areas of talent and performance management. So that was the journey of 9 years. And post 9 years, I moved to Schneider Electric. Schneider Electric, as you know, is a global MNC in the space of industrial automation and energy management. So I've been with this company now for close to 6 years. And in my current capacity, I manage the HRBP portfolio for the set of businesses here in India. And along with that, I work with the business leaders for those businesses, really shaping up the next stage of our people strategy and the people priorities for the business. Apart from that, I also work with my colleagues in the India HR leadership team on various strategic projects in the space of workforce of the future, org designs, creating a strong employer brand for ourselves in the market. So that's been the journey for last 6 years in Schneider, and really loving my last few six last 6 years with the company.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. Truly appreciate it. Today, we are diving into the vast topic of emerging trends in the future of work and workforce. And while we won't be able to cover everything in this episode, unfortunately, there are a few crucial areas I'm very excited to explore. First up, let's talk about the recent surge in remote work. Given the significant shift towards remote work, what innovative methods do you see emerging to enhance virtual collaboration and recreate the sense of companionship often found in traditional office environments? Also, at the same go, Salil, could you highlight how alternative work models like gig economy platforms impact traditional employment structures? And again, I'm touching two crucial aspects at the same go. So, what's your take on both?
Sure. So thank you for that question. Let me address the first piece around the remote work which you asked. So, a lot has changed after pandemic. The entire concept of remote work, it has gained more and more prominence, especially after the pandemic, as we know. But, I think this trend about debate on the work from home versus work from office, I don't think it will sustain for so long now, because there is always a middle ground which companies are in the mode of, arriving at. But having said that, the future of work has undergone a significant transformation, especially with the very widespread adoption of the remote work. And I think some innovative methods which organizations are embracing to really enhance virtual collaboration and foster camaraderie among the remote teams. One is really creating that space for collaboration, which is done through one-on-one connections. So in remote settings, leaders must intentionally connect with their team members on a personal level, which basically means doing regular one-to-one interactions, helping build relationships, really just encouraging idea sharing, and providing support wherever required. And then second is also the a piece around cross-functional collaboration. I think it's important that leaders and organizations encourage that collaboration where people who are spread across different parts of not only the country but could be across the globe, across different teams and departments. How can we bring them together in say virtual brainstorming sessions or cross-functional project groups, and really have those inter-team workshops to allow exchange of ideas and perspectives, because that really helps foster innovation, and that's the real essence of why a collaboration is required. So that's on collaboration. And then I think there is a lot which through which we can leverage technology also for doing this. Of course, video conferencing is known to us. Beyond regular meetings, we use them. We use conferencing for also team building activities now, workshops, social events, etc. And then a lot of collaborative tools which have come up now, platforms like Microsoft Teams, Slack, Google Docs, they all facilitate very real-time collaboration and a seamless communication and document sharing. um, and then lastly, a piece which is not spoken so much is around how do you build an environment of trust and psychological safety with your team, especially in the remote kind of setups. So that's where I think a lot of transparent communication helps, really encouraging a very open dialogue with the team. So leaders should be open to share information very transparently, address those concerns, and then in the process create a very psychologically safe environment, environment of care, where employees feel safe expressing their opinions even if they have different point of view. So that's, I think, some of the real examples or initiatives which organizations are taking, really to build that camaraderie and the collaboration required in the remote setup. Yeah. So and so that was on the remote setup. Now you also were asking about how is this freelance work, yeah, coming up. So I think this is a very interesting topic which you have brought up, because I myself have been investing a lot of time on this topic, because this is a topic which I've been working on in Schneider, under our approach of how do we put skills as the denominator of the work, and not limit ourselves to jobs only. This skills first approach is also part of our people strategy in Schneider, which is basically talking about how do you increase the skill diversity of the organization by really accessing a very broad and on demand talent pool, and which is what all these freelancers provide us. I'll just want to bring in a analogy here just to make my point a bit more clearer on this topic. In 90s, when we were all using landline handsets, we always used those handsets in a very reliable manner, and they worked in a very similar way for multiple decades. And it sounds so much like the jobs of today, which has lasted for so many decades and offers us reliable rewards. But what we don't understand is that in the late 90s, the iPhones, which eventually came up, in late 20, close to 2006, 2007, the research on iPhones was already happening in late 90s in terms of, computing power required for them. But then there were people who were rejecting it because they thought that this would need a massive amount of computing power and storage. And this is exactly what is happening in the space of future of work and the workforce, because now you have all these network providers, freelance platforms available out there in the market who can help you get access to a wide pool of freelancers. But still there is this notion of or a mindset of being fixed into a job or a full-time employee kind of a role, and which is what we the organizations are trying to come out of it. And the way those small incremental upgrades has made us the iPhone users of today, I think these small incremental upgrades which are happening now will really shape up the future of work. So having said that, I think on this topic of freelance workforce, I think there are multiple forces which are leading to for organizations to think on this approach. When you talk about external forces, I'm here referring to the need to bring in much more agility in the system, by having a workforce through which you can foster innovation in a very quick time. And then of course there is a very strong growing talent pool which is available now in the market, especially after the pandemic. So that's on the external force. Now on the internal forces, I think there is a strong skill demand versus supply gap which organizations are facing, and this pool of freelancers really helps you bridge that gap in some way. And then there is this entire element of employee demand elasticity, that you may not always need employees for full time roles, and that's where a freelance talent would be a better fit for those roles. And then on the tool set itself, I think uh, while the freelance as a word is not something which is new, but the entire concept of talent marketplaces, which was earlier mostly limited to internal talent marketplaces, has now gone a step ahead in terms of external freelance marketplaces, which are now providing companies with an access to these pool of freelancers. So that's where the tool set is also, helping organizations to access this pool. And then the last piece is around the mindset, which is where organizations are rethinking in the way their jobs have been structured in the past. So there is a big shift which is happening in the way the requirements for HR and for the leadership is emerging when it comes to jobs. So we are no more into a space where it was always about, organizing and filling jobs. Rather, we are now moving into a space where it's more about deconstructing the jobs, automating the jobs, and then reconstructing it in a way that, what can be the constituents of this job, which can be done in a freelance manner. And then this entire concept of job architectures is now more and more moving into a skill architecture kind of a concept, where you are trying to match the skills to the tasks. In fact, in Schneider, we have taken a project around skills transformation, which really is moving into this space of how do you kill a skill architecture for the skills of the future. And then really the career ladders, which have been a very traditional way of, moving people up, is now moving into how do you reskill people, and therefore create those pathways which kind of reflects the individual motivations of, each of those people. So, in summary, if I have to talk about this entire topic of freelance, first thing is we really can't ignore this topic. Freelance economy will continue to be, a trajectory of significance in the model over the next 3 4 5 years. And also, I think this freelance workforce model is not something which is separate from the existing workforce model. It's more like a augmentation, more like a complementary setup, which helps you provide an access to skills. And then, of course, there are immediate results which companies can see through this model. There are it really, helps you get a faster access to the people. So therefore, the turnaround time to get the skills is much shorter. It helps you get an access to some very hyper relevant quality skills which, you may not get that easily in the market. And there are multiple business cases which we in Schneider are using this for example, new revenue generation, consulting for our sustainability audits, just to get some specific um, expertise on, say, content creation. So these are some of the use cases we are dabbling with. But I think this is a long game. We need to start small, but we need to really iterate fast on this. And there are enough partners now available outside, who can really help you get that access to that pool of freelancers. So that would be my take, on this topic.
Interesting. You have lucidly explained both remote working and gig economy. And somewhere I think there's one other thing that is equally important, and that is DEI. So, again, the fundamental pillars of diversity, equity, and inclusion have assumed a pivotal role in shaping the narrative of the future of work. And somewhere I'm sure you must have noticed organizations recognizing the significance of fostering environments that champion equal opportunities for every individual. Now, I think it's important to know from you the practical strategies organizations can implement to create environments that not only prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also ensure equal opportunities for all employees. So, what do you have to say about that?
Sure. So I think DNI as a topic now is core to any people strategy, and not only people strategy, but the overall ambition of the business ambition of any organization, because it brings with itself so many benefits which companies can leverage on. We talk about how it helps increase innovation and creativity in the team. How does it enhance decision making abilities of of the larger team? How do we get a approach which solves the problems in a much more inclusive manner? It helps increase employee engagement and retention, and of course, it creates a very strong employer brand for the people in the and for the organizations outside also. So, in Schneider, we also believe DNI is a business imperative, because it helps us create that entire culture of innovation and performance, which is generated through the diversity of people, and a very strong environment of inclusion. Our ambition is also to offer equal opportunities to everyone everywhere. And for us, DNI is not only about having a right gender mix, but really to ensure that we have a very fair representation of diverse groups. and every individual has an opportunity really to be the best version of themselves. So now, if talking about what are some of the strategies which organizations can implement to promote this kind of a culture, I think the first and the most important one is to have a very clear commitment right at the leadership level. I think organizations should clearly communicate their commitment to the DNI agenda through their mission statements, whether it's policies, public statements, and then the leaders should lead by example to demonstrate that, that dedication to fostering that culture. The second thing which I can share is how do you eliminate biases, whether conscious or unconscious, in the processes like hiring and promotions. So that's where I think organizations should implement fair and unbiased hiring and promotion practices. Now, this includes how do you train your recruiters and also the hiring managers on all these biases, and how do you use a very diverse interview panel, concepts like blind resumes, which can help you minimize that bias. And then I think it's also about building a very holistic and inclusive work policies and practices. So organizations should develop inclusive policies and practices that supports employees for at all stages of their life. This includes implementing flexible work arrangements, accommodating diverse needs, promoting work-life balance, and really providing resources for each of the employee, irrespective of what background, what gender they come from, for their own career development and advancement opportunities. And then we also have concept around employee resource groups, which exists in organization, and we also have one in Schneider. This really helps encourage a very diverse representation in the leadership positions when you establish employee resource groups that provide support and a sense of belonging for the groups. ERGs can also really help foster networking, mentorship, and really provide insights to the people availing or benefiting out of it. And then the last but not the least, I think really creating a culture of continuous dialogue on this topic, because this is a topic which you will not reach a end state in a very short term, whatever that end state could be for that particular organization. And therefore it's always important to continue the dialogue on this topic with your leadership team, with your employees, with your managers, and really creating that awareness on a very, very ongoing basis. So that would be my take on this topic of DNI.
You have touched upon something really crucial, and that's fair and unbiased hiring practices, like following the blind resume policy. So, do you think in future this is something that is going to be in full practice? Like, there are certain companies who will be practicing this, but will it become a norm rather than an exception?
It should, rather it should, if we have to move into a culture which where we really want to eliminate all the biases. And that's where the challenge lies, in that how do you coach your managers, your hiring managers, your people leaders, to really you know embrace this mechanism and not look at it as yet another initiative which HR is trying you to do. So I think ideally should become a norm, because that's where the real change will happen.
True. Perfect. Now, with the increasing prevalence of artificial intelligence and automation, the nature of employment is undergoing a profound transformation. Although it's true that the shifts bring both new opportunities, it may also bring challenges for workers. So, Salil, could you help us understand the nuances and implications of these changes or challenges for that matter? Also, please let us know the ways individuals can proactively prepare for the jobs of tomorrow.
Yeah, I think any discussions which happens today, you can't really ignore the topic of AI. So and when I'm reminded of this topic, I'm reminded of a quote by an author called William Gibson, who said, "Future is already here. It is just not it is just unevenly distributed." And I think that is exactly what is happening with AI. It's not that AI has suddenly sprung up. It was always in works for last so many years. Just that after this Chat GPT came, it became much more popular. But I think this convergence of AI and automation is, of course, reshaping the world of work, which is therefore bringing a lot of opportunities and challenges. So let's talk about opportunities. I think one thing which AI really helps us with is that it enhances the efficiency. AI will automate a lot of repetitive tasks, which will therefore free up a lot of human capacity for more complex and creative work. And then the second opportunity which I see is really in the space of personalized learning. I think AI driven platforms can really tailor the learning experience, and in the process really enable that continuous skill development for the people. And the third opportunity which I see is the really the capability of improving the decision making. I think the AI will analyze vast data sets, which will eventually help organizations, while taking decision across different domains. Uh, Now, having shared the opportunities, I think we also need to reflect on what are the challenges which exists with this AI. So I think there are multiple research which comes up around job displacements which the AI may bring in. So I am not an expert in this field, but what I can really share is that I don't think the jobs will go away. But what I think is that there will be a skilling or a reskilling which will be required for a lot of what we do today. Some tasks currently done by humans will be taken over by machines, which will therefore lead to workforce shifts, and that is something which we need to be ready for. I think the second challenge is also about the ethical considerations of AI. As AI systems make more decisions, the ethical questions may arise around biases, transparency, accountability, etc. And then the third concern or the challenge is also about the privacy. If more and more data is getting collected through the AI driven systems, it does raise a privacy issues. But having said that, I think I very strongly believe that AI may not replace you as an individual, but a person using AI may surely replace you. And therefore, you need to be ready for that kind of a future. And it all starts from, really upskilling yourselves and knowing more about AI. In Schneider, for example, we already had taken a very early lead on this topic around building awareness of our employees across the group. We have this team called AI and Data School, which does very regular sessions with the employees across different domains of AI and how it can touch different parts of different functions, including HR. So I think really the first step, if you have to prepare for jobs of tomorrow, is first to embrace this and be, uh, you know, get yourself more aware of what this technology brings to you in your own domain.
Interesting. Really interesting. My biggest takeaway would be AI will not replace us, but a person who uses AI will. So that was something really good. Now, shifting gears, earlier, once you get a degree, you are considered sorted for life. But it's not very true in today's scenario. We have got to keep on learning and upgrade ourselves at every step. So it would be great if you could suggest how can individuals navigate the demands of lifelong learning to proactively improve or reskill and ensure they remain well positioned in the rapidly changing job market.
Yeah, sure. So I think let me again bring a quote which I read few days back, and it's a well-known quote. It says, "The illiterate of 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn." This is a quote by Alvin Toffler. He made this in his book many years back called Future Shock. So as I was thinking about this quote, I actually went to Google and searched what are some of the skills you would need for the future. What are some of the skills I should learn to prepare myself for the future. And interestingly, Google will give you close to 1.5 billion search results on this topic. And I try to do a similar search on LinkedIn also, and it also gives you a equally diverse range of advice. But what I think is that in a world where automation is like a rising tide, that can do more and more of tasks that human can perform, we need to look out for skills which will be relevant not only for today but for multiple decades to come in future. And therefore, that is where I want to bring this concept of what I call meta skills. Meta skills are those higher order general skills that really enable you to develop the core of what you are doing in your domain. And just to give you a metaphor, I want to bring a metaphor of an iceberg here. So the skills are really the tip of the iceberg that lies above the water. But the meta skills, which I'm referring to, are really the 90% of that iceberg that lies below the water. And let's speak about, say, three meta skills which I can share. So one is really the learning agility. I think is an ability of a person to how does that person quickly size up a new situation or a problem and really decide what to do. Therefore, it is an ability to quickly make sense of the new context and the pattern recognition. In short, learning agility is about knowing what to do when you actually don't know what to do. And I think this skill may become one of the very strong predictor of person's ability to flourish in a VUCA world. And then there are different dimensions to learning agility. You have mental agility, people agility, change agility, around how comfortable you feel with completely new experiences, results agility on in terms of how can you remain positive and still deliver results in a very fast changing environment, and the last piece around self awareness. But I think learning agility is not something which can be learned online or in a classroom. The only reliable way that I know, at least, is only through experiences, only by taking on new challenges and really seeing them through the success. So that is one meta skill. The second one, which I can speak about, is what I call the entrepreneurial mindset. And here, the point I'm trying to make is not about being an entrepreneur, but really how can you have a mindset of an entrepreneur to flourish in a really a, the what we call the VUCA or a Bani world. And some of the dimensions of this mindset is how do you dream big? How do you recognize opportunities? And if there are problems which you see, how do you pick them up and really make an impact around that and solve for those issues? How can you be more resourceful? How can you be more persuasive in what you do? How can you really be more action oriented and problem solvers, and therefore have that tenacity to solve for situations? So that's the second skill. And the third skill which I can share about is the soft skills. And we often don't talk about this skill as being that important, but let me try to bring a context here through an example. We all know Google, how obsessed the Google is with data. And interestingly, this project called Project Oxygen many years back, where they were trying to understand what makes the most effective managers and the high performing teams tick. And when they were doing this study, after a few years when the results came out, some of the skills, specifically technical skills like science, technology, engineering, mathematics, these were the skills which actually came last. And and that was really a surprise. But let's talk about what were top 7 skills which came out of that study. One of them was communication and listening. Second one was around how do you include others, in people who have different points of view in the larger discussion. Having empathy towards others and being supportive of your colleagues. How do you be a good critical thinker and a problem solver? How are you able to make connections across complex ideas? And lastly, being a very good coach. And interestingly, this study which they did was also validated by a poll by World Economic Forum, which they did many years back. And when they were listing down the top 10 skills required for the future, many of the dimensions of what Google study showed came up in that study also, which were things around complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, emotional intelligence. So I think these would be the three meta skills which I can talk about, which will stood the test of time for last. It has stood the test of time of last many years, and I think for the next 2-3 decades, this will become very important skills to have as an individual.
True. Beyond the individual level, the broader context of sustainability and environmental impact is again increasingly shaping the narrative around the future of work. So, somewhere it prompts us to envision how workplaces can align with efforts to promote eco friendly practices and reduce carbon footprints. And somewhere I could not help but take up this question, since I think that this is going to be somewhere shaping the future of work as well. So, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think this entire topic of climate change and sustainability is of course very close to what we do in Schneider. I am very proud of the fact that I work for an organization where this is really core to what we do as a company, and as our purpose says, which is to empower all to make most of energy and resources, and in the process bridging progress and sustainability for all. Now let's break this into two parts. I can share first about how are the workplaces getting reshaped under this large umbrella of sustainability, and then let's talk about the landscape of the worker itself. In the workplaces, I think organizations are increasingly embracing remote work, as we were sharing earlier, and which basically means that how the flexible work arrangements are therefore reducing the need for daily commuting, and thereby reducing or lowering the carbon emissions which may come up from transportation. And then it's also about how are you integrating green technology into your infrastructure. The integration of green technologies in workplaces through process like energy efficient lighting, smart building management systems, renewable energy. I think these will become more and more prevalent. Then it's also about sustainable supply chains. How businesses are prioritizing sustainable and ethical sourcing practices, which leads to adoption of, say, eco-friendly material and a very responsible supply chain management. And then it's also about how do you bring in the advocacy and the education around this entire topic, and therefore companies are investing resources in this topic around how do you build that awareness through your employees, and in the process encouraging sustainable practices both at work and also in the personal lives. So that's on the workplaces as such. Now on the worker, I think as the world transitions more and more towards environmentally friendly practices, the demand for skills which are related to, say, areas around renewable energy, energy efficiency, sustainable design, these will only increase. And there is this concept of what we call green skills, which will get integrated into the workforce to drive a lot of sustainability initiatives. And this trend of green skills is already started to reshape the job market, and it has led to emergence of many new roles like sustainability specialists, renewable energy engineers, carbon footprint analysts, green technology consultants, right? So there was a study which was done by, I think, Team Lease few years back, which in fact last year, which ranked India fifth among the top 25 countries with relatively high green skill intensity in their workforce. And the report also said that how the green talent or the green skills in the workforce is rising by close to 12% between, say, 2023 and 2024. So this trend, I think, will only increase, and it also provides puts an onus on the organizations to therefore invest in those skills of future. And I think not only the organizations, but I also think there needs to be work which should happen through the educational institutions and the training providers, which should offer programs. And I think there are already some examples of that happening through some institutions and training providers, that they are catering to this growing demand of sustainability expertise. And as far as organizations are concerned, I think they can also look at launching awareness program. In fact, in Schneider, we have this initiative called Sustainability School, where we encourage and expect all employees across the company to get themselves upskilled on this topic of sustainability, right at a beginner level, at a novice level, and then moving into advanced stages, irrespective of which function you come from, because this topic eventually is touching all of us in some way or the other. And then you know uh, one of our new brand business campaign which we have really launched in Schneider is what we called Impact Makers, which really looks for those exceptional people and organizations who are turning sustainability ambitions into actions, at the intersection of automation, electrification, and digitization. As an organization, Schneider, because this topic is so close to us, our growth ambition is to become an industrial technology leader, working with and for our customers, partners, employees, communities, really to enable a very sustainable future through electrification, automation, and digitization. And it was with this growth ambition, that only a few months back we repositioned our culture, and people values in line with these ambitions, and we launched a very strong, compelling employee value proposition, which is called Impact Program. There is a set of values which are defined through impact, which is inclusion, mastery, purpose, action, curiosity, and teamwork. So overall, I think there is a lot which is happening in this space of sustainability, and this is a trend which I think will only increase as this topic gets more and more attention.
True, correct. Somewhere I've tried to touch upon aspects which I think is very crucial for the future of work and workforce. And I'd like to thank you for helping us understand all these aspects better. So we have reached the end of today's episode. But before we wrap up, Salil, is there a final thought you would like to leave our listeners with? They would love to hear it from you. Additionally, for those keen on staying connected with you beyond this episode, could you please share how they can reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. So, see, the only thing which I can leave all your listeners with is just to have a very curious mindset, because that's something which really helps me grow as an individual, as a professional, both personally and professionally. So, really having that mindset of curiosity, ability to connect dots across different streams, different ideas, and then bring it to what you do as an individual. So that's something which I think is very important. As far as how can you reach me? Yeah, I'm available on LinkedIn. I try to regularly post on LinkedIn under my blog, which is called Curiosity Streams. So people interested can go there and read. I'm also available on Twitter under the handle Salil Raheja. So that's where people can reach me, and I'm happy to have inputs and feedback on what they would have gathered from this conversation. And thank you so much for inviting me. And really look forward to more such enriching conversations in future.
Great. Salil, thank you so much for joining in today's conversation. Your insights and expertise have added immense value, and we appreciate the time you have dedicated to sharing your knowledge with our listeners. So a big thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sanjeevni.
Thanks for listening to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.